Hi everyone, small message from Europe to our friends across the globe, those who speak English. It's mostly addressed to people in the Indian subcontinent, in warm places, and also to America, where also there are a lot of warm places. As you may know, we've been working on ProPag Math, we're working on preprint, where we've analyzed statistically with big data and working together with clinical doctors, Professor Bricaire being the leader in that, the factors that we could gather looking at data from everywhere that help propagation or severity of the epidemic. We've done thorough work, and through some videos, most of them in French, we've shared info until the paper comes out, because some of the info we felt was useful. We're just sharing this info as research for people to make their own opinion, because we believe that people should make their own opinion, should free their minds, and should understand what is being said and privilege what is being said, what it relies on, rather than who is saying the message. In this epidemic, there are a lot of politics. Unfortunately, there are too many politics. There are politics that are at a very high level, that have implications on Africa and the Middle East, and there are politics at a lower level that have economical implications. We put that to the side and we kept on looking at numbers, and once we had numbers, we would compare them with human situations. One thing that you may know, I hope you do already, contagion happens by 20 folds, probably more than that, 20 folds in winter actually, in closed spaces with little aeration, with or without mask. Closed space, little aeration equals risk of contagion. Sun does seem to provide a real protection, well beyond the UVs destroying the virus, which does happen, by actually acting on the host, us. We've seen that the epidemic was dropping independently of the policies led as the UVs were increasing. When we talk about sun, we have different kinds of skins, and some of us need more sun than others. But as we're getting the level of sun we need, we become less sensitive and more resistant, most probably. The epidemic started in Brazil. When they were approaching fall with their skin, they needed a lot of sun and they were starting to lose that sun. It started at the beginning more acute in richer populations that spent a lot of time in closed spaces with air conditioning. Teleworking seems to have helped a lot in different countries. Now, we have seen the epidemic start with the lower part of Europe early on, as they were in winter. Why did it only start in winter? The jury's out there. There are different options on the way people live, and there are also interactions with other viruses or antibodies to other viruses. But this is not, but it started systematically in the lower part of Europe, and with a gradient from south to north, moved up, to reach the very north of Europe later than the south of Europe. Spain and Italy were hit before France, Belgium right after, UK after, and so on. So the real take-home lesson is, out of thousands of clusters in winter, late winter, very few actually none concerning more than 5 people, we found in open space. And that's even before masks were there. In summer, the protective effect of sun makes that calculation probably even stronger. The late manifestations we've had all over Europe, and you've had probably in America, have led in Europe to no outbreaks. A lot of people were concerned. There you had a lot of people together, very close to each other, and still there was no outbreak. Australia, which still has control, and I hope they keep it, on the virus, has tested in Melbourne, which is one of the first cities to go into winter there, a lot of people to check if an outbreak happened after there was a 20,000 people manifestation. And they knew there was a case who was positive in that manifestation. In spite of that, no cluster was formed there. So open space presents a lot of advantages. Taking sun does bring protection. And this is confirmed in many countries. But then we noticed there was an outbreak in India, Pakistan, but also in Middle Eastern countries. And that happened very late. And we went and spoke to people there and doctors there. And what we found is that when temperature rised significantly, people went home, closed the doors, put the AC on, recycled air, recipe for a disaster. So it was very interesting. They had sun, they escaped from it, they locked themselves and created the propagation conditions for that. So try to open up your minds. In the United States, there are a lot of very, very smart people. We have been looking up to America for such a long time because of people able to think. So open up your minds. All those who are data scientists who can calculate, look up the data in the world, read our preprint, criticize it, improve on it. Just help us all understand better how something that is ultimately quite mild, is leading to such an intellectual paralysis of fear, such battles that many of them do not make sense. And looking back at Europe, where there were different policies, the countries that had very smart, targeted policies had a much milder epidemic than the countries who went into panic and put blatant, hard rules. In the United States, we're seeing the same. The epidemic is milder in Europe, in most Northern Europe countries where they have less sun protection, but where they had targeted actions. They allowed people to go to parks, they allowed people to walk around, they didn't wear a single mask in all Northern Europe, and they had a very mild epidemic. There was one exception to that was still milder than Southern Europe, which is Sweden. Sweden is very far north, and Stockholm in particular. In Sweden, nothing happened in most of the place, but in Stockholm, they had a result that is still better than most of Southern Europe, that is still better than Belgium, and still better than the UK. Much better. In spite of putting very few regulations. A lot of people say Sweden didn't do anything. Sweden did interesting things. Sweden did, one, they stopped all big events where super spreading happens. Dissemination factor plays a key role in that epidemic. That is, 80% of infections come from 10% of population. So you want to avoid super spreading events. So they stopped super spreading events and they relied on their people, advising them to live, but to keep some social distancing. The result is a harder epidemic than Finland, which would be comparable, or Denmark, but there is a difference. Now they know where they're at. They have gone through the epidemic and they faced it. So that's a good thing. On the opposite side of the spectrum, Germany made a very different choice. they decided to skip their turn in hope of finding a cure. And they were successful. If you look at the over-mortality, to avoid all politics and all different methods of counting, we looked at over-mortality. In Germany, nothing happened. So they were successful, unlike a lot of other countries who were more or less successful. And they were successful in the sense that they are a country that is prone to epidemics. We've compared the epidemic with the previous flu epidemics. And Germany succeeded in skipping their turn. They still have some fear. They don't really know where they're at, but they were successful. Sweden acquired freedom. Germany spared people. Sweden, the price, of course, it's too many people. What was still lower, that those countries that had brutal global actions, targeted, understood actions are useful. Germany tested a lot at the beginning to understand how it spreads and went and did every single action that stops super spreading and let freedom on everything else. And in the street, freedom did happen in Germany. Sweden went on and did exactly the same job and just decided to let more freedom, accepting a higher price to have more, to basically get more freedom and get where they're at and understand further. So they had targeted actions. Denmark did something very similar to Germany and had the same success. Portugal did something similar to Germany and had the same success. Even some African countries, Egypt had an impressive success with a very targeted policies. People go out in the day when sun is out because they have a lot of sun, and at night they stay home. They had a lot of freedom. Their economy continued, but of course all these countries were influenced by the rest. And remember, put the politics away, put your ideas away, look at the numbers, make the right choices, because ultimately what we want is to be happy, alive, smiling, and safe. And we need all four of them. We need to live happy today. We need to feel safe for tomorrow. And the price of safety shouldn't be sacrificing the present, because we only are sure of the present. And often when our mind is free and our present is happy and responsible, the future is happy and responsible. So remember, with the heat coming up, open the windows, because this is something that seems to really have a very strong impact. Target it and think. I'm seeing battles that are political all over the place with ideological. We're not fighting each other. We're not even fighting a virus. We're fighting, in reality, we're looking for freedom, happiness, and safety. So let's be smart, free ourselves, kick fear away, and replace it with goodwill.